My name is Richard Taylor with Ideate Software. What we're here today is to talk about Automate Sheet and View Management with IdeateApps. So Ideate Software creates 4 add-on solutions to Revit, and you see those on the screen here. Ideate BIM Link, Ideate Explorer, Ideate Sticky, and IdeateApps. And if you're interested in any of these other solutions, then you can go to the Microsol resources page, and they've got a lot of information. We've actually done a number of different webinars. In fact, just a few weeks ago, or maybe it was last month, we did a specific webinar on Ideate Explorer and how you can manage your warnings using Ideate Explorer. But again, today we're going to focus on our solution called IdeateApps. And IdeateApps is a collection of 9 productivity tools for all Revit users. But 4 of those productivity tools are focused around Revit Sheet and View management. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today is our Sheet Manager, our Align, our Clone, and our View Creator solution. So as I said, IdeateApps is an application for Revit that will allow you to increase the productivity for your entire BIM staff. And it's really developed for any Revit user. And I'd like to say it's agnostic to your particular discipline. So, we have architecture, engineering, construction, MEP type of users. So if you're using Revit, any of these tools can really help you with your productivity. So today's learning objectives for this particular presentation is to give you an overview of the Sheet and View tools within IdeateApps add-on solution, and also to show you how you can use some of our tools to help you name your views and basically adhere to your BIM naming standards. And so speaking of those rules, I'll show you how you can customize the rules for naming and creating views, give you some creative workflows about how you can use these tools in your Revit environment, and then of course also show you some tips and tricks along the way. So again, you'll see up at the top of the screen there are, IdeateApps has these 9 tools for Renumber, Quick Select, Smart Delete, X-Ray, Spell Check, but the ones that I've highlighted there, those 4 tools, is what we're going to be going over today. So those 4 tools, as I mentioned, are the Ideate Sheet Manager, the Ideate Align, the Ideate Clone, and the Ideate View Creator. So all of these tools we feel are fitting a particular need or solving a problem that Revit has. We love Revit as a great building information modeling platform, but we realize that it doesn't meet everyone's need and solve every workflow. So that's why we've developed a lot of these add-on solutions. So the project browser in Revit was designed to sort of be a collection of certain, let's say, tasks or say manipulations. It's not showing you all of the elements that are within your project, as an example. And it wasn't really designed to lay out the views on a sheet, and it wasn't designed to be able to duplicate these sheets very easily. And I'll show you some examples of that. So we start with our Ideate Sheet Manager, and then I'm going to be showing you the Ideate Clone, which allows you to duplicate sheets and keep the all of the properties of the sheet. So if you have a title block, if you have properties associated with that sheet, those will also be duplicated. But then we can also control the viewports on that sheet. And so that's one of the reasons why Revit doesn't have this tool to duplicate, because there's no way to really handle the viewports. So we can actually duplicate the viewports, or you're going to see that I can swap relevant viewports. For instance, maybe an east dependent view with a west dependent view or something, or maybe a first floor architectural plan, swapping that out to a first floor HVAC plan as an example. So you're going to see some examples I have of that, of being able to duplicate and still control those viewports. And then the third tool is called Ideate Align. And this can be used either separately or in conjunction with our clone tool that duplicates a sheet. Ideate Align will assist in keeping the viewports aligned on the sheet. And so if you have a plan view, we are going to align based on the X and Y coordinates. If it's a section or elevation or detail or schedule view, it's going to be aligned based on the upper left crop region of that viewport. So we'll get into more of that, but as we use this tool, like I said, we can actually align multiple views at once, or when you're duplicating a sheet, we're automatically going to keep that information aligned. So what I'd like to do now is switch over here to Revit. And today for my demonstration, I'm going to be using Revit 2019.1, which is our latest, or which is Autodesk's latest release of the software. And our Ideate software applications are available for Revit 2016 through Revit 2019. So everything that you see today is available on Revit 2016, 17, 18, and 19. That's what we're developing on. Always the latest Autodesk release and 3 releases back. We do have archive earlier versions, but we're not developing on them anymore. So if for some reason you had an older project that was in Revit 2015 as an example, we do have, for instance, IdeateApps on 2015. It's just not being developed. It's sort of static. So we'll be continuing it when Revit 2020 ships, is what we assume next spring. Then we'll be supporting 17, 18, 19, and 20. Okay, so you're very familiar probably with the ribbons within Revit, the tool ribbons. So we have architecture, structure. You'll notice over here that I have Ideate software. And so when any one of our applications are loaded, you'll get this Ideate software ribbon panel. And you'll notice that we have our IdeateApps, as well as we're going to focus on today, our sheet and view tools. So I'm going to come over here and select, as I said, kind of the central traffic cop, if you will, is the Ideate Sheet Manager. Now the Sheet Manager, when this dialog appears, you'll notice that we've organized it based on views of the project to the left and sheets to the right. And in fact, there's a little tick mark down below here. It says Hide Placed Views. It's showing me that I have 128 views that have not yet been placed on a sheet in my project. If I uncheck this, it's going to show me all 415 views, as you see here, the number changes at the top. And this organization of the view structure will match what you've set in the project browser organization. And of course, in the project browser organization, you can actually set up an organization to hide place views as well. But this is kind of nice that you can just uncheck and check this very quickly. So let's say that we want to create a new sheet. How do we go about doing that? And you see that as I scroll through here, I've got a number of sheets and their views are shown on those sheets, right? So you see here, I've got storefront elevations and wall sections and 3D views and so forth. So I'm going to come down to this right here, which is our create sheet. This is actually just accessing the create sheet within Revit. So I've got a title block. And I've got, I can use a placeholder sheet that may have been created from information that actually could be in Excel, or maybe you've actually gone through. You see here, I've created a number of E101, 201, so forth sheets, M100s, M201. Right now, I'm just going to select new. I'm not going to use one of these placeholder sheets. And so when I select that, it's going to give me the next sheet in the sequence, which in this case, you see here, I had Z.6, Z.7, and now just Z.8. And so I can right click and rename the sheet. So I'm going to call this, we're going to be working on it. It's going to be my parking plan. So I'll just say parking plan, and I'll just say 1. So right now the sheet is created, but there are no views on that sheet. And typically what you would do is you would drag and drop views from the project browser. But what you can do now is drag and drop views from our dialog here or from other sheets. So if I expand the floor plans here, I've got 8 floor plans. And I'm going to make this a little bit larger just because I know the view names are pretty long. So I've got a parking dependent 1 and parking dependent 2 that neither one have been placed on any sheet. So if I click on the parking 1, click drag and drop it over here to Z.8. And so it assigns that view to that sheet. And in fact, then I can expand, and you'll notice that it's got now the floor plan parking dependent 1. I can start, drag and start dropping any particular view on my sheet. I can also look at other views that may appear up here in my sheet list. So for instance, I've got some schedules right here. There's a door and frame schedule and a door hardware schedule on sheet Z.6. I'm going to click and drag and drop that over to Z.8. So now that schedule gets assigned. Then I have an elevation on our finishes, Z.7, and I'm going to click on this signage elevation, click, drag, and drop. So what it's doing is it's removing the viewport from sheet Z.7 and assigning it to sheet Z.8. So now we have this parking plan 1 that has an elevation, a floor plan, and a schedule. Now, your first question might be, hey, Richard, how did it know where to place those viewports on the sheet? And I have an easy answer for you. It didn't, because you still have to sort of interact with the sheet as to where these are. So what it does in the background, you'll see here's the sheet, right? And the viewports are just aligned along the top. So now I can just use my cursor here and say, well, you know what? I would like my floor plan in the upper left quadrant. I want that elevation maybe aligned here to the lower left, and then I want my schedule view, let's say something like this. So what's nice is I can certainly assign all of the viewports to the sheet, and then I would just have them all right there along the top and then move them to the location that I want. Okay, so now we have this Z.8 parking plan 1 that has our plan, our dependent 1. We have a floor plan, we have a elevation, and we have a section. And now we'd like to duplicate it. So this is what I wanted to show you over in the project browser. We have all the list of our sheets over to the left. And if I scroll down to the sheet list here, you'll notice that we have what we've been working with, the Z.6, Z.7, and Z.8. And so if I wanted to duplicate Z.8, which is in dark, bold letters because it's my active view, I can right click and I can say duplicate, and you'll notice that in Revit, duplicate, duplicate with detailing, and duplicate as a dependent are grayed out. There's no way in Revit to duplicate a sheet and also understand the viewports on that sheet. So it's just not possible. So we've solved that with our tools, and that is our Ideate clone. So again, I'm going to say that here we're dealing with the parking plan. I can either go over here on the dialog and select clone, or I can select it from the menu at the top. Either one is fine. We try to give you all the tools right here. That's why I say that the Ideate Sheet Manager is like a centralized traffic cop, because this dialog, as you've noticed, I can actually have it, it's a pretty big dialog, but I can be working on other things in Revit, zooming, doing other commands, and still have the sheet manager active. So it's what we call non-modal. It just means that it can still float on the Revit environment, and you can still work in Revit in the background. So with that, I'm going to select on this parking plan 1, and we're going to select on clone. So this dialog appears that says, okay, well, you want to clone Z.8. The next in the sheet sequence is Z.9. I'm going to give it a name of parking plan 2. So we'll say we're here 2. Then what's the key factor is down below, the viewport options. So I have this parking plan dependent 1. I have the ability right from this dialog to duplicate it with detailing, or to pick another, as you see here, it says similar view. And in fact, if I expand this just a little bit more, you can see that now I've got that dependent 2. So I can basically swap it with the parking plan, which is the parent, or I have dependent 1, dependent 2, or I can duplicate it. So in this case, I'm going to say, you know what, I would like to swap it. And actually, before I do that, I'm just going to show you also, if I say duplicate with detailing, down below then, you see that there are view naming rules. So I can duplicate it, but then give it a suffix or a prefix in the view name, which is a nice feature. But for right now, I'm just going to swap dependent 1 with dependent 2. The signage elevation, now it says, well, do you want to pick a different elevation? So again, you can also duplicate it, but in this case, I'm going to pick this elevation WE. Now, number 1 and number 2 is a floor plan and an elevation. The way that Revit works is they can only be on one sheet. Revit only allows one view per sheet. But with schedules and legends, you can have them be on multiple sheets. So this condition here where it says the new sheet current, it could leave the door hardware schedule and it would show also on this new sheet that I'm creating, Z.9. Or I can also swap it as well. So I can say, you know what, I would like to swap it with the room type schedule. So what I've set up here is to create a new sheet that's going to have the same title block, the same sheet properties, but the viewports, I'm swapping dependent 1 with dependent 2. I'm swapping the elevation signage to elevation WE, and I'm swapping the schedule from the door hardware to the room type. And then I'm going to hit clone. So then it creates that new sheet, and it's going to keep all of those views aligned for me. So after that's done here, creating those and assigning those viewports on the sheet, we'll be able to look at those. And so now we'll say that that's just about done here. So there we go. And now you'll see that we have our Z.8, right, which is our, in fact, I'm just going to close this for the time being. Here was our original parking plan, right, which had these views, the elevation and the schedule. And here is Z.9, which has now a different elevation and a different floor plan. And the floor plans are in the same location. And if I look, I'm going to zoom up here on the room. This is the room type schedule, and it's basically aligned it based on this upper left crop region here, the same way as over here. Now, remember, this was the door hardware schedule. And again, it aligned it based on this upper left position right here. So if I go ahead and do a ZA and fit all of those, you can see. Now, it kept those aligned, but I can also manually align. Just to show you how this works is I can come over here and I'm going to take that viewport, which was just created, and I'm going to just move it off to the side here, right? So now obviously the parking plan Z.8 and the parking plan floor plan Z.9 are no longer in alignment. So we're going to come over to our Ideate software and we're going to hit align. So, or I should say select align. Hit seems like a very strong word. So I want to start out the alignment view. I want to have it be Z.8. And so there are multiple views on that base alignment view. So it's basically saying, well, which view do you want to align to? The door hardware schedule, the signage, or in our case, we want the renumber parking plan. So it automatically knows that, okay, well, based on that, here is the plan on Z.9 that refers to that. And so I've got this little check mark that says show similar views only. So when I come over here, I'm going to get this off to the screen here so you can see it. When I hit align, it's going to pop right back into place. So you no longer need to use the guide grid. You can keep the views aligned based on the X and Y coordinates. So if I go back here to Ideate Align, in my example that I showed you with Revit, I was only doing one view at a time, but I do have a little video here that shows how you can do multiple views. So I thought that would be nice to show you. So in this case, I'm going to just run this little video. And so here is where I bring up the Ideate Align tool, right? And I'm going to choose that I want to align the alignment view is that first floor podium. And here I'm selecting now the second floor, third floor, fourth floor, and fifth floor, and automatically aligning their geometry. So once you get that base plan where you want it, And the same way with the schedule, I might want the schedule aligned on a different view as well. And then I didn't show this, but it was kind of apparent. You can double click on the views in the window to the right to open up those views if they aren't already open. And so here now you see my view in the lower left was my original first floor plan. And then I was able to align the views, second, third, fourth, and fifth, even those that aren't the same size, but basically it's keeping that geometry. It's the X and Y geometry of the project. So if you'll notice in the upper right of the views, you've got the fourth floor and the fifth floor. You know, they're smaller footprint, but it's keeping those aligned correctly. Okay, so that is, those three tools again work in concert together, and I'm going to come back to those in a moment. But that is the Ideate Sheet Manager, the Ideate Align, and the Ideate Clone, allowing you to really manipulate any of these views and sheets in your project. So the fourth tool is called Ideate View Creator. And this allows you to create new views based on a, again, a baseline view. So what happens in Revit is you can duplicate a view, but then you usually have to go back after the fact and say, oh, I want to assign this view template. I want to assign this phase. I want to assign, you know, all these properties that you have in the view properties, assign it to the view that you just created. So what View Creator does, it allows you to basically build rules and assign all of those up front. So when you're creating new views, you can say, well, you know what, I want to change the name, but I want to assign a new phase or a new design option or a new view template. And so these rules are very powerful in how you would create that. So when I switch back over here to Revit just for a second, I'm going to go ahead and fit this view, right? And make sure that that's up to date. So now we've talked about our Ideate Sheet Manager, our Ideate Align and Clone, and this last one is View Creator. And by the way, it's also accessible under the Sheet Manager. You know, again, my central traffic cop. When I bring up that Sheet Manager, you'll notice that I have the View Creator accessed here. These three over to the right, we put them over on the sheet side because the Create Sheet, the Duplicate or Clone Sheet, and the Align are all really kind of referencing sheet tools, whereas the View Creator is actually referencing the left side of this dialog, which is creating views. So let's go ahead and select View Creator, and you're going to see that when the dialog appears, there are three options. So there's three methods for duplicating and creating new views. The plans to levels, duplicate views, and apply dependents. And the rules will basically show you, like for instance, a dependent, it can actually show you which rule is applicable for the method that you're working with. So what we're going to do is show you an example of the first one, which was this plans to levels. So I'm going to switch back here to my View Creator here on my PowerPoint presentation. And we're just going to go to the next one. Again, like I said, you know, easily create all these standards up front. And so here is the plans to levels. And so what we can do is look at the browser organization. And right now, you know, I can set it so that it's going to show all of the views, right, based on by level. So you notice that I've got the views set up here to level 1, level 2, level 3. And maybe I have a particular view on level 1 that I need to duplicate to the other levels. So I can select the view list here from level 1 or level 2, right? I can search for a particular view that very easily. So in this case, I'm actually going to search for views on level 2, but I want to apply it to level 1, level 3, and the roof level. And you see then the rule is saying, all right, well, I'm going to rename those based on the default. And so it's giving you a preview. You can have change the suffix, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit or in much more detail in just a moment, how we can build these rules. And so I can specify that, you know, I want the level discipline, and there you can see that either that or the level itself, and that will change the name. So if the name is duplicated, like in this case, there already is a level 2 HVAC duct plan, I can't create the views until I remove that. So think about that is it's giving you that preview, right? And saying, these are the views I'm going to create. And then I can select done. And then I've actually got those views now. So you see there is the level 3 HVAC duct plan that I'm opening up here, that I can go right to and has all of those particular properties. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. So again, let's switch back over here to Revit. And let's look at, that was the first method, which was plans to levels. Let's look at this duplicate views. And this is probably the simplest, I guess, to understand. If you select on duplicate views and you select views, right? I'm not even going to, it doesn't even matter what the rule is. You'll notice that I can duplicate with detailing, or duplicate as a dependent when I'm creating new views. In this case, I'm just going to pick the standard, which is duplicate. And we're going to come over here and we're going to select on not elevations, but we're going to come over here to floor plans. And you'll notice that I've got this first floor finish plan. I've got first floor plan east, first floor plan west, and first floor signage, right? And they all are previewed by, or I should say, the name of it has IdeateApps. That's just the way I named it. So what I'm going to do is select on all of those views. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them that I'm selecting that I'm going to duplicate, and say next. Now it will come through and it basically says, well, you know what? Let's expand this. There's already a first, I've done this a couple times, so there's already a first floor plan copy. So if I change this suffix to something else, let's just say, I don't know, NC for new construction, that's saying, well, okay, I still can't, let's do here one that I probably don't have. Let's do RT. Oh, I've got that too as well. So now, in this case, this rule is what we really want to set. So what I mentioned that we want to create this as a new view that has different properties. So we've already got these rules set up. One of them is called duplicate phase. So when I select on that, notice it's giving me some the ability of the rule to interact, and I'm going to show you that in a moment, is that now we can set the phase and we can set the phase filter. So if I set the phase filter here to, let's say, show previous and new, right? And the phase itself is going to be new construction. And notice that over here, it's still saying like demo for the view name. And I'm just going to come over here and just type in NC again for new construction. So if I go ahead and select this, it's going to create 5 new views that have the name IdeateApps First Floor Building Code -NC with the property override set to new construction and the phase filter set to show previous and new. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Let's create those 5 views. So it says completed, pretty easy, done. And now over here in my view list, let's go back up. And if we go to my floor plans, notice that if I go over here to this IdeateApps First Floor Finish Plan NC for new construction, I can open up that view. And in my case, I set the phase filter, right, to show previous and new, and the phase to new construction. So it automatically, every time that it duplicated that, this NC, as you see here over NC, 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 for new construction, it had those properties. But maybe, as an example, we don't want to have the prefix, or I should say the suffix NC. We want that to come directly from the phase. So how do we do that? So again, I'm going to go over to my view creator. All right. And I'm going to use that duplicate views again. We're going to do the same thing where I can pick the same rule, duplicate phase, say select views. So in this case, we're going to come again down to the views that we have, those plan views, those floor plans. And I'm going to pick the ones that are not NC. So the ones that were the original. So there was the finished floor plan the east, the west, and the signage, right? So there's those views I'm selecting, and I'm going to say next. So this is where we were before, right? And in fact, if I type in the word NC, it's going to tell me, hey, Richard, you can't do that because you already have those views created. That's what we just did previously. So it's got this little warning sign, and it won't allow me to create those. But instead of having a name override, what I want to do is modify the phase rule. Excuse me. So I'm going to come over here to the rules, and we have one called duplicate phase. I want to edit this, or let's just say duplicate it. And now, instead of a copy, we're going to say duplicate phase, and we're going to call it name. And here's where we have what I call like the secret sauce of being able to apply the properties that you want for both the name as well as the individual properties when you're creating these new views. And for those of you that may be familiar with our IdeateApps renumber tool, the way that we build these rules are very similar. So you look over to the left, it says the view name. There was a prefix, right? There was a name, and there was this suffix. And when I double click on the suffix, it said prompt for value, meaning that the individual user was able to basically type in, as you saw, I typed in NC. But in fact, I don't want that. I'm going to remove it, and I want the actual parameter or field to be driven directly from the Revit information. So I'm going to add a field. And so this is an intelligent Revit property. We can specify whether we want the source to be the new view, the original, or the parent. In this case, I want it to be the new view. And what I want the field to be is the phase name. So we're going to come down here to, let's see, level, phase name, and say OK. Now, and you can see down below, it's giving you a preview of the name of the view, and it just appended new construction to this. Well, what I want to do is also add another constant, which is a value. I'm going to say dash, and then we're going to come over here and move it. So my formula, so now I have the prefix, the name, dash, phase name. Okay. So, this is basically saying that I want to interact with the name and have that control over here. Now, what I can also do is apply either view templates or disciplines. So in this case, if I say, you know what, I would like to have the individual, let's say, prompt for the discipline. When I check this prompt, you're going to see what that means. Or I can, in that case, I'm saying in the rule, the person has the ability to interact with the rule. Then this is really important. When we come over here to view templates, the assign is the property that will appear in the view, meaning that if you come over here to the properties palette, when it says view template, that's what gets assigned to the view. If I select that, I want this to be, let's say if there's a architecture, or let's say site plan, let's say architectural plan, I can specify that. But you'll actually notice that the architectural plan view template is setting the discipline and setting the phase filter. So in fact, I'm not able to have the user interact with that. So I may not want to assign that particular, I may say, well, you know what, I don't want an override there. I'm going to have the user define. You can also apply up to 3 view templates without assigning them. And what that may, sometimes a view template can set a design option, or it can set other characteristics. So you can first apply a view template that may set the design option, and then have it be a view template assigned to the actual view. So there's a real big difference between applying and assigning. Assigning kind of makes it stick, if you will, and it'll be an actual Revit property over here in the palette. But when you apply, you're actually saying, just take the properties of that view template and apply, number 1, number 2, number 3. And what it will do is, in the level of hierarchy, if you apply template 1, but then you apply template 2 that does make different settings, it'll be the last one that makes those changes. Number 3, if it overrides other things, and then finally the view template assign is the last one that will override. So you can see that when you're applying these things in the sequence, there may be a situation where things get changed. And again, I'll talk about that in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close this, right? Because I've said duplicate phase by name. I'm going to say save and close. And when now I want this phase name here. So we're going to now say OK. And you'll notice that the options to me are different. I never had this discipline option before. Now that the user has the ability to interact and say, well, you know what? I want to set the discipline to be architectural. Now notice when I set the phase, we have 3 phases here: existing, new construction, and office renovation. And the great thing about this is when I set this to office renovation, notice that on my view up above or over here to the right, it immediately puts office renovation in the naming sequence. So depending on what my standards are, I can set up these view rules to create the standards that are used in my naming conventions for views. So notice that again, if I switch it to existing, it's now going to just automatically pull that property and make it part of the view name. So that was, the first rule that I showed you, the default rule. I just was able to take the name, let's say NC for new construction. I could type anything I wanted. Now I don't have a suffix. It's bringing the phase name directly from the property. And again, the phase filter could be, for instance, show previous and demo as an example. And then I can do a prefix and say, RT dash. So now the view name is RT, first floor building code, office renovation, and it has all of these, the appropriate names. So now I can say create those 5 views. And now you'll see those views are all created over here. So if I double click on this first floor building code, renovation, you'll notice that as I scroll down to the properties here, the discipline, let's see here, or I should say the phase filter was show previous and demo. The phase itself was automatically set to office renovation. And I always there's the discipline is set to architecture. So those just showing you 3 examples of settings that I set prior to duplicating these views. So let's switch back to my presentation here. And before I go on to some more rules, what we can also do, and that's the duplicate views, I also have the ability to create that third selection, which is to create new views based on their dependence. So as an example, let's say that in this case we have floor 1 and we have an HVAC duct plan. And you'll see that already in this view I've created duct plan A, B, and C, which are the 3 quadrants, right? So it's like the left, the middle, and the right quadrant. And I've already set up the scope boxes and the crop regions to reflect that. So I just want to take that level 1 HVAC duct plan and those 3 dependent views and now apply those to other floors. So in this case, you'll notice I'm doing A, B, C as the left, middle, and right. And now I want to set it up to be on level 1, level 2, and level 3. So I'm choosing which ones I want that rule to apply to. And so in this case, you'll notice that now it's got the same naming convention of duct plan A, B, and C, but now on the different levels. And there already was levels 1 of A, B, and C, so I'm going to remove that and then create those 4 views. Or I'm sorry, create those 24 views. Okay? So it's very easy to apply dependence as well. So yep, and in fact, if I go over to the project browser and open up one of the views, or several of the views, you'll notice that I've got the floor plan, piping, ABC, and then plumbing, ABC. Now, the rules, we supply about 20 or 30 different rules with our Ideate View Creator. But as you saw, I'm able to duplicate and modify those rules very easily. So we have a location here, which are basic rules and bonus rules. So if I switch back over here to Revit and I bring up the View Creator, all right, notice how it says reading the rules. What it's doing is reading from the default location. So if I go to the little cogwheel here under the settings, you'll notice that it says rules will import from this location. And if you browse, you'll notice that we have supplied, we have basic rules, and if I double click there, or bonus rules. And so you can see like where I'm looking at that information. So in fact, if you look at, let's just say, that location again, there are different rules underneath each one of those. Okay, and so that allows us to specify where those default rules are coming from. Now you can place this all together. So we talked about our view tools, our sheet manager, right? So we can now use the sheet manager to create new sheets with title blocks, and then use Ideate Clone and Ideate Align to arrange those different design options or different phase views. So I'm going to do that real quickly here. If we come over to our first sheet, so I'm going to come back over here to View, switch my windows here to my, let's say, finishes there. So let's say this particular one right here, right, which is our finishes, and it has this view on the sheet. So now I would like to come over here to our clone. And here's where we can say, you know what? Okay, now we're going to create Z.10 finishes default. We'll just say phase or office renovation. And then we're going to say, you know what? Instead of the first floor plan west, we're going to come over here to our first floor plan west, but we want office renovation. Remember, we have east, west. This was one of the ones that we just created. So there was our office renovation. And the door hardware schedule, I can keep the same, or I can do something else. I can say like, oh, I want it to be the room type schedule. So now let's say clone. So I'm using the new view that I just created with View Creator that has the new properties, which is automatically setting the phase. So now I have, here's the finishes for the office renovation, and here is the, let me see the finishes. Let me see, I got too many views here. So let's go here, there's Z.10, and there's the finishes default Z.7, and the new one that we just created. Again, keeping the same location, the same crop regions, but now the settings for that view is that it's the office renovation instead. So again, you can use all the tools together to first either create the views and then use the sheet manager, the align, and the clone to create multiple sheets that all match the alignment. So a few tips here, I've already mentioned this, is that when you are aligning views and you have a floor, ceiling, area, or structural plan view, it's going to be aligned based on the X and Y model geometry coordinates. For non-plan views, which is basically everything else, it's going to be aligned based on the upper left crop region. And I know we've asked, or a couple of users have asked us to be able to control whether it's the upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right. So we do have that as a feature request, but currently it's only the upper left right now. And then secondly, the view rules, like in this case, when you click on the rule, it will highlight the method that applies. Because, you know, sometimes as an example, if you've got a rule that says dependence, it's only going to apply when you're using the copy dependence. It's not going to apply to plans to levels or to duplicate. So they can it can apply to, or the rule can apply to multiple methods of creating these views. And then again, I tried to explain this a little bit and hopefully it wasn't too confusing, is that when you are building the rule, you have the ability to hit that little check mark that says prompt. And what that means is then the user, when they run the rule, will have the ability to modify or change that property. So like in the example on the screen, the user, when they run this rule called duplicate phase, will have the ability to interact and change the discipline, the phase, and the phase filter. And if you uncheck that prompt, then they wouldn't have, it would just be automatic whatever was set for the rule. So you could have a rule that is more stringent, basically setting all the characteristics, or you can have a rule that has user interaction. It's really up to you. And again, the interactive prompts, sometimes what will happen is if you've specified multiple things, like in this case, you've said that you want to interact and control the phase filter, but yet you've assigned a view template that automatically has the phase filter set. Well, the view template is going to take control or have precedence. So what happens then is in your interactive prompts, the phase filter is gray. And you might wonder like, well, why can't I change the phase filter? I set it up in the rule. I said that I wanted to interact with it. It's just because when you created the rule, you also applied a template that set that, and that's taking precedent. And then speaking of those precedents, this is another one I was trying to explain that can be kind of difficult is to understand, is that you can apply up to 3 templates, view templates, and then also assign. So when you assign a view template, it becomes part of the properties. Like you see there in my example, the view template is architectural plan. But when you're creating the view, you can have 3 view templates that are applied. And again, sometimes people will create a specific view template just to set the design option or just to set maybe a specific characteristic like discipline. So, that can be done in a series in the order basically that you're the precedent, which would be, you're applying 1, 2, 3, and then the final one would be if you do assign a view template, that's going to have the highest level, which will take control of any of the other previous's that you might, if there are conflicts that you might set. So we're almost at the end of the hour. Hopefully I've given you a quick overview of the sheet and view tools in IdeateApps and giving you a couple ideas about how you can use the rules within Ideate View Creator specifically to pull information from the model. Whether in my case I used the phase name, but you can pull any property you want to have it be part of your view naming characteristic. You can customize those rules. Like I said, we supply about 30 rules to get you started, but you can very easily build your own rules. And then you can use these 4 tools together for some really creative workflows and again, sort of tips and tricks. So again, the Ideate Sheet Manager, the Ideate Align, the Ideate Clone, and the Ideate View Creator are all about automating sheet and view management of your Revit project.